and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from around the world. I'm your host for today, Priscilla, and I'm joined today through the magic of the internet by Anna Schlegel. Welcome, Anna. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We're really happy.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Not at all. So let's get on to the show and start. Anna, we're gonna start talking about your background. I understand you were born in Catalonia and you grew up in the Pyrenees, which is not far from France, where I come from. So we're neighbors. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your personal background?
Sure. I was born in Ulot, which is very, very close to the French border. And I think everybody thinks that because of that, people that are born in border towns, that you're immediately immersed into so many cultures. I remember, and I grew up in the late 60s in the Spanish, Catalan, French, fiasco. And so dictatorship, all of that. So we grew up speaking Catalan. Spanish had forbidden Catalan. Usually we were not allowed to speak Catalan, but that's all I only spoke until I was 17 and moved to Barcelona. And then I had to put the gear of Spanish there. And yeah, when we would go shopping, many times we would go shopping to France because it was at the border, right? And in the Pyrenees where Catalan is pretty isolated there. And back in the 60s and 70s, it was even more so. I think, Europe is way more global right now.
Yeah.
So that's how I grew up with that setup, right? And then you move to Barcelona, it's like, oh, people are speaking other languages here. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, very multicultural.
Yeah.
So then you moved on. So you started your studies, and you hold a bachelor's degree in German and English philology, and but also a postgraduate degree in linguistics and German philology. So
that's right.
You speak really impressive 8 languages. I see.
I do, yes.
And that includes Catalan, German, Italian, Swahili. That's super impressive. So can
Spanish.
You tell us? Yeah, Spanish,
French.
Of course, French. So what triggered this interest in languages in the first place?
Well, as I said, I grew up speaking French, Catalan, Spanish just by being from that area.
Yes.
And then my father somehow had this vision that English was going to be very important. I know we were from the mountains and all of that, but he had this vision that in order to do, he had a good job and he got to travel. So he would come back and say, around the world, people are speaking in English.
You need to learn English.
So so he had that insight for us. So we, all my brothers and my dad actually got us a British tutor.
Wow.
And so every week we had to see her about 3 times. So from a very early age, I spoke English. And then German came when I studied in Barcelona. And then, if you speak French and Catalan and Spanish, you get Italian. So when I moved to Germany to do some part of my studies, my roommate was Italian. So Italian came about that way. Yeah. And Swahili came because I've been a fair amount of times to Kenya. And so I wanted to study it so that I could speak a little bit with the principals of the schools that we were supporting. And I don't know, some of these things just took on.
That's fantastic. That's really impressive.
I guess I was born I'm okay with languages. I'm really bad with numbers.
You're certainly very impressive when it comes to languages. So now I'd like to talk about your current role. You're the head of product portfolio solutions, as you mentioned, information engineering and globalization at NetApp. Can you share a little bit with our audience, about some of your backgrounds on NetApp and also your current role in the organization?
Sure. So NetApp is one of the top leading companies in the world for data management. We're, the data-driven company. A lot of top 50, 100 companies use our services, our products. I started at NetApp about 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, as the head of localization. Very quickly, because I had run globalization at VMware, Cisco, other places, was pretty lucky to be able to talk to the CEO already very, very early on to say an advantage for the company would be if we didn't think about localization, but we thought about globalization. What are the countries, the country managers? Who are we placing to manage these countries? How are the geographies organized? Are the departments inside of the company hooked up to this process, right? And so we changed the name of localization to globalization within the next couple of years, which was very, very good. And I reported to the vice president of strategy for a while, and he told me, Anna, if you want to be someone someday, think about strategy. Don't think about, localization workflows and translations and reviewers, and things like that. And so he taught me the art of strategy, thinking about revenue and thinking of the why and not localizing everything and focus, a lot of focus, and not trying to do everything, but really what is important for the Japanese customer or the Korean customer, or why was Europe for us so different than APAC or the Middle East or Latin America. So that's how we became the globalization strategy team. And 3 or 4 years ago, I was very lucky to be asked to manage the information engineering strategy for the company, because we're all passionate about authoring and content and words and sites and digital experience, right? When you localize, you see everything, you see all these sites.
Yeah.
And I was not very good at information engineering, but I think I've learned quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's a very powerful union to have the content writers and then the globalizers.
Absolutely.
And then last year, we expanded the team to further, this is, I think, I'm being very well guided to further the fact that now we manage the workflows that the product managers have to use. And so that's these product portfolio solutions where we have tools like from the Atlassian tool suite, where we know what program managers and product managers are going through. And so we can think of the phases of the product, of the life cycle, and see, are they doing all the right things? Are product managers doing all the right things in each one of the steps? That is even more powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what we have today. We're developing, different portfolio to market ideas on how products can incubate or innovate, and then how do they grow? How do they get globalized? And then how do we harvest them? And so what is that whole life cycle of the product? And so we manage that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Wow, thank you so much. So you also occupy the chair of Women in Technology at NetApp. And can you also tell us a little bit about this chair in Women in Technology, please?
Sure. So today there's a huge party at NetApp. We're celebrating our 10th year anniversary today.
Happy
so
birthday.
After this,
Happy
we're
anniversary.
going to So after this, we're going to a huge party with balloons and the CEO and Kava and all kinds of stuff. So NetApp had a CTO about 10 years ago, very clever man who has been very successful, who had this idea that there were not enough women here. And so he started something called Women in Technology 10 years ago, okay? This guy had a vision 10 years ago. They started with 2 women, then 3 women, then 5 women, and it kind of grew. And it was very much in engineering. It was in the engineering department. I could see this group, right? I was in product marketing, so I was never in engineering at that time. And I could see these women, and I would say, I have all these studies in linguistics, but I'm not a computer scientist, so I don't belong there. And little did I know that about 3 years ago, they told me go and lead some groups in engineering, right? And I knocked at their door and I said, hey, I'm from product marketing here. Could I please, I'm now in engineering. Could I try this Women in Technology thing? And they said, what do you know how to do? And I said, not much in engineering. But they asked me to be their treasurer, the finance. And remember, I told you I was not very good in numbers. So, and I took on the role, and a year later I was the chair. We are about 1,300 women. It's grown exponentially when we opened it up. So I said, if I'm asked to be the chair, please let me bring the rest of the women in the organization, from legal, from support, from professional services, from marketing, from IT, from the channel teams, from sales. And they said, okay. So we went from like 400 or 500 to like 1,200, and it's a huge party right now, right? And there's so much emphasis in the Silicon Valley today for technical companies to welcome women and retain the women that are here and attract more women. And so that's the role that I have.
Fantastic, thank you. That's very inspiring. And you're also a member of the Fin Global Forum, and you delivered a keynote presentation in which you said, I'm quoting you, going global becomes crucial as we're trying to expand innovation across the world. We need to find ways to expand information as fast as thunder across the world, especially in areas that will help humanity. So how do you see, to what extent do you think technology will help companies going global, especially when it comes to the localization industry?
So I don't think about localization anymore. I think of the power of the people in the business of globalization. They see a lot, right? They work in Africa, they work in Japan, they work in Europe, they work everywhere. So why do we keep talking about localization? To me, it's like all these super clever, fantastic people, please collaborate in resolving issues, right? Instead of fighting about price and quality, it's like, let's just rally around big business problems and resolve them. And if you have teams in Japan, maybe they have a much better idea than you had it in the States. And so what's that secret sauce that you can empower everybody in your teams to really innovate? And so if you're lucky enough to have teams that sit around the world, all these headquarters to the field geo story, I like to break that up and shake it up. And anybody who's a good entrepreneur needs to stand up and collaborate. There's so much digital advantage today that you don't need to sit together like you and I, right, to collaborate and do some good damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's very, very important that when we say we're going global, this is done with people. And so these people are very clever. And why are they versus us and all these collaborations? So look around your teams to see somebody in India may have a much better grasp of a problem or may have more time to research something. And so this going global does become very crucial.
Absolutely.
And these notions of the headquarters and the field, it's people get very stuck in that, but I like to break that up.
Fantastic, thank you. So now I'd like to talk about your book. You're also an author, and you released Truly Global, the theory and practice of bringing your company to international markets. The book is about enterprise globalization and based on, I'm quoting you, your experience working in geo-alignment, translation, localization, digital, product QA, globalization, and technical publications team across a handful of Fortune 100 American enterprises. So the book conveys that every company seeking to grow beyond its national boundaries need a globalization team to help develop, translate, adapt, and promote products to international markets. Can you share some insights into how companies do this, and especially the importance of integrating globalization in each department?
Yes, so there are companies that know how to do this really well, and I think it's not the norm that companies know how to do this, but you need to think of who is running the show inside of your company, and you need to think of the customer life cycle of your product. Every company is trying to sell something, right? Or you're trying to sell something. It could be that you're trying to sell jewelry and you're a one-man or one-woman show online. So you need to think through all the little stages and break down. You have to break every little piece down to its core. The pricing, the timing, the marketing, the support, the service, the return, the break, it got broken, every little thing, right? So who drives all those pieces? Because in companies large like ours, where there's thousands and thousands and billions of dollars at stake, you need to create a forum or some sort of very serious governance that it's well architected. And so that's what the book talks about. You can't do this alone. You can't be a localization team and say that you're going to do this. You need the executive vice president level support because there's a lot of funding involved, right? You need to have clarity on what countries, you need to have clarity on what products, and you cannot take all your products globally. Yeah. Unless you're Google or, and your product is online and quick and short. We have products that have 1 billion lines of code. Like imagine taking those, things to market. And so some things release on a daily basis because we have a lot of cloud products now, so that we have a very agile, quick model. But we also have products that release maybe every 6 months, right? So you need to think of who you are. Maybe if you're Netflix is very different, if you're Dell is very different. But if you're in charge of this, you need to be really good at networking and breaking down all the pieces of your customer lifecycle.
Thank you very much. So now, what would be your best advice that you'd give to organizations looking to develop their brands? You're saying breaking each circle. Is there anything else in terms of bringing your services globally?
I think a little bit what I was saying. If I understood the question, I would trust the person who is running the show, who trusts your director or your vice president of globalization. They'll probably have a good instinct of what pieces are working well and what pieces are not working well. One thing that I've seen throughout, these past decades of working with many companies is usually marketing is pretty well globalized. Legal is very well globalized because you need all the papers, the compliance, right? All the trading paperwork. You need lawyers in Japan, you need lawyers in Amsterdam, wherever your hubs are, your tax implications. But there are other departments that don't think that way from the get-go. And usually it's engineering.
Engineering, oh, interesting.
It's very interesting where you see a lot of developers not coding, right? That's why there's so many internationalization issues where when you're ready to partner in China, maybe the product was encrypted or the product was hard-coded or didn't have the right certificates. And so it's very, very important that companies have a very clear idea of how a product is even going to get placed inside a country.
Of course.
And then once you've placed it, who is going to catch that product and who's going to run with that product? You need all those pieces, right?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in addition to everything that we've discussed so far, you're also the co-founder and chief operating officer of the board of Women in Localization. Women in Localization, a global community for the advancement of women in the localization industry, which recently celebrated its 10th anniversary as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the organization? I understand it counts 5,000 members?
Yes, so it's these two different organizations. They're both turning 10, which is amazing, right? It says something that both organizations are turning 10 now. I guess we women started smelling something 10 years ago. Yes. So Women in Localization was co-founded by Silvia Avari, Eva Klaudinova, and myself, when we all worked at VeriSign. And 10 years later, we are 5,000. We are 5,000. We're in, I can't repeat, I don't know how many chapters we are because we're opening 3 right now as we speak. We're opening in Russia.
Wow, great.
We're so excited. Yeah. We're in Korea. We're everywhere, right? It's Singapore. It's just fascinating. Women need other women to help each other, understand each other. There's a lot of men supporting us. in strategy, in putting panels together, but it just works. It really does. I mean, these communities where we need to talk about if you're a mom, if you went through a divorce, if you're a single mom, if you're remarried, I don't know. It all works. It's life, and we connect to drive innovation, and we connect to develop ourselves. I mean, this is also like people that volunteer to run these organizations. I call it like a test bed for leadership. Like, you are going to join, we're going to train you, and we're going to make you, and we're going to help you, and we're going to support you, and we're going to mentor you to be the title that we're giving you. And we're giving people titles that they've never dreamt that they would have, but we take them there, right? So we slow down very patiently. We mentor these women into these roles. But yeah, I think last year alone, we put 64 innovation panels.
Fantastic.
On anything around globalization and culture and being a woman. And so it's very impressive.
That's great. And what are the plans for the continued growth of the organization?
Of women in localization?
Yes.
We just had every year we have a strategy session with one of our advisors, Dr. Pryor. And right now it's all going to be about the member. So we've grown a lot and we continue growing. And so this growth, right? Like, how do you manage this? We're a volunteer organization that never got one penny from anybody. I mean, I don't know anybody else that, and we just turned the nonprofit to actually start, being able to get some sponsorships because we have to, right? We can't continue growing like this. But from our strategy perspective, it's going to be all about the member. Why us, and what do you get in return? So the 64 sessions on innovation in globalization is something. But also Lois Searle and Martina Pakula just started a mentoring program. And so we just are about to kick this off where women can be paired to a mentor like me, and you can ask questions and you can kind of grow
great.
together, and there's support there. So yes. I think the year of the member, we're calling it. We want to know how many we are. We finally have a database. We also want to create an online community because a lot of women don't sit next to a hub, right? Like we have, I'll give you a Catalan chapter. If you're not in Barcelona, it's kind of hard to drive there.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. Yeah, because so you're talking about like how women can help each other, support each other, and as part of the organization, you have 15 different committees. That's really important to help all.
There's 15 committees, yeah, and these 15 committees are led by program directors, right? And so program director is a very special keyword because a lot of these people were not directors before. And so now we're teaching them and training them. What does it mean to be a director? It comes with a lot of accountability, right? And a lot of virtual work and leadership. And I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And now I'd like to end our interview asking you, is there any project that you'd like to share with our audience that you'd be working with, or any secret projects?
There is always secret stuff that we're working on. I think, and I work with a super clever team. I call them the best team ever. I've never had a team this awesome, where they are developing some artificial intelligence for internationalization.
Oh.
So that internationalization is no longer debated, but it just runs in the back end for the developers. So that's one thing we're working on. The other thing that we're working on is this globalization maturity model that I've never seen anywhere in the world. That is our IP, and we're starting to work on something that we're calling ego tech.
Ego tech, oh, sounds intriguing.
Yes, yes, because all technology needs to be about me. And so how do we make sure that NetApp's information is super ultra personalized? That is a big daunting project, but those are some of the things that we're working on.
That's very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So Anna, it's been an absolutely pleasure to have you on the show today. I can't thank you enough for your time. And that's the end of today's show. So thank you so much for spending this
Awesome.
half an
Thank
hour
you.
with us. Well, welcome.
Yes.
And so we'll be back. We'll be back today with more interviews. So make sure that tune in again to hear Anna Schlegels from NetApp, and we'll be back with more interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye bye.